Good evening. This is Gloria Taylor Brown, and this is a gathering of priestesses with Karen Tate and Miss Catherine Ravenwood. And if it looks a little different tonight, it's because we're using a little bit different technology. We are using Skype, and we're recording it with the Hangout. So what I'm going to ask you is, if everything goes awry and we disappear, hang on, we'll be back. Right now, everything's working, and hopefully everything will continue working. So we are so delighted to welcome Miss Karen Tate, who has been I think she's been a radio broadcaster now for about 20 years. Is that correct, Karen?
Well, actually, I've been doing my show for 8 years, but many, many moons ago, I was actually in radio before I even came out to California. So if you added all the years together, maybe 12.
Okay, well, I had read it and I wasn't quite sure, and I didn't spend the time I should have done because I'm a bad host, and get all your current information going. But I've been watching you for many years, listening to you, and I know you've had Nikki Scully on your show, and you've had Norman D. Ellis on your show, and you've had a number of other people that are, some of them famous, some of them infamous, and I know you've done a lot of really important work in bringing in the goddess information and the mysteries. And I know you're also, because we had a little conversation, a dedicated Egyptophile or Egyptomaniac, whichever it is that we are. I've decided one of the shows I really should do is the All Egypt All the Time show. And but anyway, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank Miss Catherine Ravenwood for coming back and being with us again. We proved one more time last week that if Raven is not on, we have technical difficulties. Now, we don't let her touch any of the technical, so we don't know how it is that she manages to hold it all together. But without her, we have technical difficulties, so she's required. And I really appreciate her being willing to give up time and be here and be present with us.
Well, I'm a Cancer. I love job security.
So anyway, Karen, I'd like to, begin with the question we always begin with, which is, what drew you onto the Priestess Path?
Wow. Well, first, thanks to both of you ladies for having me. And as some folks maybe have heard me say before, no one is more surprised than I am that I'm on the Priestess Path, because I started out life in that bubble of the Bible Belt in New Orleans. And you can probably imagine you don't hear much about the goddess in the Bible Belt. But my husband and I moved out to California in the late 80s, and what can I say? I feel like, looking back, she was probably there waiting for me to awaken. There were so many references to Isis that I just wasn't aware of when I was in New Orleans. So many close associations with Mary. Catholicism, stole so much of the Egyptian stuff. Anyway, that genetic memory, I think, maybe started to kick in when I got to California, and I discovered Isis, and it was a slippery slope after that. Joined the Fellowship of Isis, started in Iceum. We were recreating ancient rituals in a modern construct for about 10 years. On the beach, we were doing personal development salons and, just all sorts of things. I'm not sure how much of it you want to talk about.
Well, we want to hear it all. We want to hear what you did, because you see, like the one woman who contacted me today from Thailand, she said, I didn't know there was anybody else studying the goddess. And I'm so delighted to know there is. And we get these kind of emails all the time. that I found you on YouTube, and I didn't know there were another group of women out there like me.
I hear you. Well, yeah, I especially get those emails now with the radio show, you know, people from around the globe. I mean, just last week, I got an email from a 70-year-old man who said that, you know, he's so glad before the end of his life that he was introduced to this. But okay, so going back to the beginning, I moved to California. I had always been interested in Egypt, though, I have to say. You know, living in New Orleans, even though I was in the Bible Belt, you know, Christianity never really got its hooks in me. And I was interested in metaphysics. I was interested in all things Egyptian. So when I discovered Isis, it felt very natural. In fact, then when we went to Egypt, even being in Egypt felt so normal and natural. I joined the Fellowship of Isis. Lady Olivia Robertson, after communicating with me for a period of time, invited me to Clonical Castle to ordain me. You know, it wasn't long after that, you know, she, you know, made me an adepta, and I was still doing Fellowship of Isis stuff when I joined a Dianic group here in Los Angeles. I started leading sacred tours because for me, it really was meaningful when I could actually stand in these sacred sites. It became more than maybe just a feminist fantasy or something. You know, it was undeniable, I guess you could say then. You know, going to the museums, you know, the British Museum, the Louvre, seeing these ancient artifacts, standing in those holy places, it was just phenomenal. And I was lucky, you know, back then I was a part-time travel agent, so travel was cheap. And I mean, I could go to Paris round trip for $300. So it's a good thing I did it then, because now there's no such thing as that, you know. So my husband and I did a lot of traveling on our own, and then we started taking people on group tours. And I started a not-for-profit called the Isis Ancient Culture Society. And that sort of was an extension of the Fellowship of Isis, ICEUM, which was called the Isis Navigatum, ICEUM of Isis Navigatum, because the Isis Navigatum was the Isis ritual that was the big Isis ritual, I would say, that we put on at the beach every March. And it was a recreation of an authentic Isis ritual. And we would get so elaborate down there, people thought we were a movie crew set or something, you know. So that was a lot of fun, and that went on for about 10 years. And you know, the not-for-profit did a lot of different things besides just the Isis rituals. We did personal development salons. We invited speakers, you know, to come talk down in LA. I mean, just all manner of things. And we did the Isis birthday every July. We would go to a tea house and celebrate her birthday. But then I got the opportunity to write my first book, Sacred Places of Goddess. And all of that travel came in real handy. And so that was the first book. And, you know, they say, you know, once you get the first book published, the second one is easier. So it wasn't long after that, I wrote Walking an Ancient Path, which was more about embracing Goddess personally and how to birth her in your community. And, you know, I can't remember exactly when the radio show kicked in, but I think probably not too long after the second book. And then I started doing something called Sacred Sundays, where I actually would, you know, we would minister to a congregation, you know, at least once a month. And I had to give, you know, messages from the pulpit, so to speak, you know. So those messages became my next book, which was Goddess Calling. But Goddess Calling starts to really bring in the social justice activism part of this. You know, it talks about, you know, sacred feminine liberation theology. And, you know, I kept doing the radio show. You know, I invited to give workshops and talk here and there, American Academy of Religion, colleges, UU churches, all of that sort of stuff. Do a lot of things with the Goddess Temple down in Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
And then in November that just passed, I edited an anthology of some of the radio show guests I sort of handpicked. You know, of all the people who I'd hit on the show in the last 8 years, and, you know, put the anthology together, Voices of the Sacred Feminine, Conversations to Reshape the World. So, so that came out in November, and I just found out last week I was chosen to give a talk at the Parliament of World Religions. So I'm looking forward to that. And this September, we also have the Goddess Spirit Rising Conference in Simi Valley. So there's still a lot of fun stuff to look forward to this year.
Yeah, I noticed that Goddess Spirit Rising is the 11th and 12th of September, when Miss Raven is going to be out here in California.
So are you ladies going to make the conference?
Yeah, maybe we can. Maybe we can come up and do some interviews up there. I'm doing interviews at the Goddess Temple for the Ecofeminism event.
That should be a really great thing.
Yeah.
I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, so, and it gives them an opportunity to have something that they can use for promotion for either the next event or this event, or however we want to do it. But yeah, so that's kind of my stepping out into, I'm sort of saying I can't stay here anymore and feed my husband twice a day. I've got to go out and do some work in the world. And if for those of you who are unaware, my husband is in a nursing home. So actually he has to be fed. He can't eat by himself. So it wasn't an off the hand remark. But, you know, I also know that, you know, I saw that about you're going to the Parliament of Religions, and that one really interested me. In fact, I looked at it. I noticed they're not going to be in 2016, but the next one will be in 2017. Is that correct?
You know, I don't know with absolute certainty. Someone told me the Parliament might not be every year. I know it's definitely not in the United States every year. The last one was in another country. So that's why so many of us got really excited when this one was here in the States, because it felt like it was doable, you know. So I don't know for sure. You'd have to go to their website.
And that's going to be in New York City?
No, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, Salt Lake City. I'm sorry. I knew it was one of those places, you know, where I'm not. Sorry. Yeah, so that's interesting. I was part of the World Congress of Women down in Costa Rica back in 1994, and that was an extremely interesting and exciting event. And we had women from all over the world who were speaking at that. And never have been to anything of quite that caliber or quite that level of interest. However, I did go to Reverend Sun Ming Moon's events in New York City right after 9/11, which was an extremely unusual experience.
Is he the guy that marries all the groups?
You got him.
Okay. All right.
And he actually paid for everybody who was there to come and stay for 5 days in the Hilton in downtown New York City. So I can't say anything against him. And luckily I was already taken, so therefore I didn't get married to anybody. So, but
I forgot to say, I am married to this wonderful guy for the last 30 years. We renewed our vows last fall.
Oh,
Good
fabulous.
for you. Congratulations.
Yeah. And you know what? He's been such a big part of all my work. I dedicated a couple of my books to him. My husband, Roy, he has just been so fantastic. He's always there behind the scenes, you know, making sure everything's working right. So he really deserves kudos. So I want to make sure I say thank you to Roy.
Yeah, I believe that any woman who is doing this kind of work needs a strong supporter. I don't care if it's a wife, a husband, or just somebody who's willing to be there and do some of the work that she can't do. It's very, very difficult. And Raven and I have talked about this sometimes. It's very difficult to do all this work by yourself. And if you're out there and you're going, my God, I'm just so tired at the end of the day, and I got this much done, but I got that much to do. Know that, whenever you hear us, that we went through that too.
Yeah.
And you probably notice I can barely keep my eyes open. I keep nodding off. I've been up till midnight the last 2 nights. So, and then up early, and working all day. So I'm sorry if I'm acting a little lethargic, but sitting here going, oh, yeah, it's been a long day.
Yeah. And sometimes that's an important thing to acknowledge, that, you've got somebody that supports you and is there for you. And I thank you, Roy, for being the support that you have been. And,
I'll tell him. I'll tell him that you said that.
Okay.
He'll get a kick out of it.
That we mentioned his name in high praise.
Yes, absolutely.
So as you've moved through all of these things, and you've got what, 5 or 6 books? I'm sorry if I'm...
4 books, working on 5.
Working on 5. Okay. And as you're working through all this, what do you think is the one thing that if you had not made those steps that you would have wanted to do? Was there something else that when you were a young girl, this was your dream that you wanted to be, do, have?
I never imagined I'd be doing this. What I did dream about, it makes me laugh now when I think about it. I wanted to be an archaeologist, but I was so silly. One of the reasons I thought I would just put that idea aside was because, I thought all the good stuff had already been found. But the other thing that I seriously thought about for a while, and this might make you laugh even harder, or I don't know, maybe in a way it makes more sense. I really thought about being a nun for a while. There was something about that sacred sisterhood that attracted me. I went to Catholic school and was taught by nuns,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought they were just the coolest thing. I didn't have any of those kind that beat you over the knuckles with a ruler. They were just really incredible, and I thought I wanted to be one of them for a while. But then high school came along, and I started to date, and I forgot about that.
Yeah, but there is something about that, about the idea of being able to sit and pray and be part of a sacred community, to be part of a community. I mean, in a way, I was talking with Kathy Jones from Glastonbury, and she says, we're a group of priestesses that are coming back. And I think in a way, the idea of having a sacred priesthood or priestesshood where we are able to come together and be supported in our worship, in our good works, or in our way of being in the world is something that as a nun, it's sort of limited. You have to be, first off, you have to be Christian, which, that would kind of eliminate me right off the bat. But I've always thought that there was that piece of just being in the contemplative state where you could actually sit and think and explore the wonders of the universe. And my goal, I wanted to be an archaeologist. And whenever I found out that you had to do a whole lot of things I didn't want to do, I didn't make that. But there was a part of me that it was like, I wanted to be a teacher, not because I wanted to be a teacher, but because teachers got an immense amount of time to do their studying for their classes, for professors, and
And they have the summer off.
And they have the summer off. They get to go to these wonderful places. And I think that desire to know more and to learn more is part of the Priestess Path. I mean, if we just wanted to sit around and eat Doritos and watch Real Housewives of New York City, I don't think we'd be on this show.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. You know, I think we are the seeker types.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we don't have all the answers. We're constantly looking for the answers. You know, we want to uncover the mysteries. And I have to say, I believe it is important. And maybe a lot of us don't have that sort of priestess support group that you're talking about. And I feel like I only got it recently. In the last few years, I've been part of a group of women and a few men that we call wisdom circles. And we get together once a month, and sometimes in between we'll do field trips and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it's where we really can sit and go deep and bounce things off one another and say, you know, I had this dream, or let's do past life regressions, or, you know, or it might be about politics or some archaeological discovery. I mean, you know, we're not limited, but they're people with, you know, with an incredible depth, and, you know, they're smart and they like to think about things, you know. I mean, that's sort of the gas in our tank. And also I belong to another group I should mention called the Abbey of Avalon out here.
Yes.
And it's a group of women who we really are trying hard to be there for one another, support one another. And it is so important because, you know, maybe it's just romantic notion, but, you know, a lot of us, you know, I'm sure you included, but, you know, we have this idea that there was a time like the red tent concept, you know, and you know, we don't have a red tent, but I feel like the Abbey and our wisdom circles are something akin to that, because we need that sort of red tent place to escape and just be ourselves and to nurture one another. I think it's really vital.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but I also think that part of it is that it's really wonderful to be able to sit down and start talking to somebody and say, Anubis came and visited me last night, and not have them ask who Anubis is. Think you're crazy because, you know, after all, who has Anubis coming visiting them at night? And you know, not having to explain what you're talking about. You know, it's like there's almost like a shorthand that you have the ability to just almost begin in the beginning of a conversation. I mean, in the middle of the conversation.
That's sort of a given, you know, because you know, these, you know, I am so in the goddess bubble these days. You know, people who would, you know, if I said something like that, they would know what I'm talking about. You know, I have to remind myself I'm in the goddess bubble. You know, I forget that we are not the mainstream, you know, that we are sort of the fringe of the fringe, if you will.
Yes.
And, you know, I forget that our lives are really very different than I think so many other people's lives are. You know, the things that are important to us, you know, maybe aren't important to maybe lots of other folks out there.
Well, one of the things that Raven and I decided after having a conversation with a young woman at her house was that we needed to stop talking about goddesses as though they were our, you know, the latest celebrity and everybody knew who they were. So we have to be careful. I mean, in Isis, I think we've explained who she is often enough that if you've watched the show, you know who she is. But, you know, if we're talking about these beings, which we regard as vital and living beings, and that we have to sort of introduce them to the world at large and that we don't have the opportunity to just simply say, oh, by the way, whenever Sachet showed up last week with a book for me to read, it sort of helps whenever you say, you know, Sachet is the goddess of libraries. She's the wife of Thoth. And, you know, she's an ancient Egyptian goddess. And then you get into so much more that it's like, okay, well, really, I wish you'd just go study some stuff and then I can talk to you.
I hear you. Well, you know, sometimes I find myself outside the goddess bubble having to make small talk with people. And I don't know about you, but it can be pretty difficult because I've sort of lost the ability to talk about the weather, if you know what I mean, you know, because this sort of stuff that is just our normal everyday kind of conversation is lost on, you know, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but, you know, women who are more concerned about the Kardashians or their baby or fashion, you know, those sorts of things just don't hold a lot of interest for me at all.
Yeah, I still haven't figured out which one is which.
Like, oh, the Kardashians?
Yeah. So
I couldn't tell you either.
It's like, I know.
haven't figured out why we know them.
Why should we care?
I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on there. So I certainly don't know who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I do have concerns, and I want to say that, you know, I have concerns about what's going on in the world. For example, Raven told me about the fires up in Wenatchee, Washington today. I have concerns about that because I know where that is, and I'm very concerned about the fact that people are losing their homes. I would have concerns about it if it were in Alabama and they were losing their homes too, even, you know, or wherever. It doesn't matter. I have concerns about that, and I want to know. But that doesn't mean that that's 100% of my conversation. And I think that that's part of, as we move into this space of a goddess bubble, if you want to call it that, you know, it's like, we're moving into a higher degree. If we use God, I am getting old and I can't remember people's names anymore. The guy who wrote Power versus Force, and his idea that we move into a higher vibrational level, and that if we stay in the lower vibrational levels, it drags us down. Whereas if we move up into the higher vibrations, it actually lifts us up.
Are you talking about Bruce?
Yes. No, not Lipton. No. Power versus David. I'll remember later. No, but it's you know, the idea of that if you can have conversations with people who uplift you. Mm-hmm. And for example, having a conversation with you, Karen, I mean, you're obviously uplifting for all of us. And we want to have others to listen to this and feel uplifted, that they're given an opportunity to see into the life of someone who is, you know, in a way walked a very different path from the followers of the Kardashians.
It's the author of Power versus Force is David Hawkins.
I knew it was David, but.
Yeah. Well, you know, you make me think of my evangelical Christian family who still lives in New Orleans, who are praying for me because they're absolutely sure I'm going to burn in hell. And I just say, you know, don't worry about me. I don't really even believe there's a hell. But yeah, you know, drawing the distinction between the life we live, it is so very different. And I think our values are so different. And I think that's a good thing, you know? And I know this is going to come across sounding judgmental, and I don't really mean it to be that way, but I think if we're worried about raising the vibration of the planet, if we're worried about doing our part to make that paradigm shift happen and, you know, being one of those 100th monkeys, that certainly brings more, I think, value to the world, to humanity, to the cosmos, than the folks that are worried about the Kardashians, you know. So I don't know.
Well, I agree. And I also think that it's a matter that anything that expands knowledge. I mean, someone was, I was at the nursing home the other day, and a young man there who goes by the name of June said, well, you know what my real name is? He says, my real name is Onofre. I said, like Santa Onofre? And he's Hispanic. I said, so what is Onofre in English? Well, he didn't know. So immediately I had to look it up, and I found out that it's an ancient Egyptian hermit from the 4th century, and he is the saint of weavers. And he's like, this young man is like, and the name means continuously doing good. I said, so your parents really picked a good name for you, because, you know, he's a CNA who's taking care of these older folks. And, but he's like, wow, you got a lot of information out of one name. He says, Wikipedia, is that where you looked it up? Yeah, I've never been there.
I know what you mean. I mean, look, I have a library of thousands of books, you know, and I just pray one day I'm going to have the time to read them all. When I retire, I say I'm going to get to all of them that are just sitting there waiting. But, you know, I think of some of my girlfriends who that's the last thing they even think about. You know, we're the curious types. You know, we're the ones that are going to, you know, look under the rocks and peer behind the locked door. Gee, that makes me think of the Naples Museum. This is a funny story, actually, I think. Speaking of looking behind locked doors, when Roy and I went to Italy, they were holding hostage in the museum the artifacts from the Isis temple in Pompeii. Now, here I had come around the world to see primarily that Isis temple and those artifacts from that, you know, from that site. Well, we got to Pompeii, and you couldn't go in to the compound of the Isis temple. They had it locked off. And then when you got to Naples, where they had spirited away all the pieces from the compound, they weren't going to let you see them. Why? Because they were holding everything hostage for wealthy donations, you know, wealthy donors to give money. Well, a lot of the artifacts, the only thing that was blocking our view was a bulletin board that was blocking a door. It wasn't even a locked door. It was just a bulletin board. So my husband says, Karen, I'm going to get you in that room. He said, I'm going to distract the guard, and you go run in there with your camera and snap pictures until there's nothing left on the roll, and hurry up out. And by then, you know, I think you'll have time to do it. And you know what? That's exactly what we did. Roy dragged the guard who was guarding the bulletin board in the doorway, asked him some crazy questions to get him out of there. He was the big distraction. I ran in, got all the pictures snapped. And now, at least, I didn't get to walk up the steps of Isis's temple as I dreamed of doing, but I at least saw the murals and some of the statues and other things that came from the compound. So anyway, I know that was a digress. You know,
no, that's lovely. I want to know those are the sort of things I want to know. This is a conversation. This is not a standard interview, and your digressions are totally perfect. I mean, Raven and I have both been to Italy a number of times, and
Not Italy, dear.
Egypt.
Thank you.
Sorry, your sleepiness is
I've never been to Italy.
I've been to Italy and Egypt, but we've both been to Egypt a number of times. And, you know, each one of us has our favorite temples in Egypt. And some of the things that are my favorites are things we weren't supposed to see.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, I want to digress also. We were talking about how we speak of these goddesses and they're like our friends, and people have to kind of get in on what are we talking about. It's been said many times that when we have a closer connection to spirit, perhaps to our intuition, who's tuned into spirit, that the best way to hone this intuition and our subconscious knowing is through symbols.
Mm-hmm.
And the goddess presents herself in symbols all the time. So you can start talking about the goddess and you're back in symbols. But when, for instance, if Gloria said, I had a dream about Anubis last night, Anubis is not a thing. Anubis is a symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And it means layer on layer on layer on layer on layer of things. So when she says, I had a dream or I was talking to Anubis, that puts me into another state of consciousness where I'm aware of those symbolic layers of who, what, how, when, and all of those things that Anubis is. And so I think lots of times we try to back out and talk about who these beings are, and it's like, we don't know how deep in we are. And it's just another language for us. So it's not just, Anubis was the Egyptian god of mortuary dealings. No, that's what the little textbook says. Anubis is way more than that. And so that's why so many of us love the tarot and other kinds of divination. And I think the goddess has always spoken to us in symbols.
Well, many layers to the onion is the way I like to describe it.
Yeah.
And I think that each one of those emblems that are those artifacts that you got to see in the museum, each one of them, although they may have been a small statue or a piece of a temple or whatever, there was more than that. I mean, there was that which it physically was, but there was also that which it represents. And then there was also the connection to spirit that was invested within it because, for example, a pitcher that had been used to serve, because it was used in services, that has a whole nother level that, it's like you can tap into that because, it's like that service itself is something that is quite remarkable and incredible. And knowing all of that, exploring that level of mystery and moving into that space, is what is the wealth and the depth that keeps us going. I mean, if it were just, reading Wallace Budge's stuff, bless his heart, and
your eyes would glaze over.
Yeah,
and sleep. It's imbued with that energy. It comes with so much sacred meaning, and I mean, of course, it's just a wealth. It's a treasure trove. All of these different things, and they mean so much more to us than maybe the average person who glances at them, because we can sort of see more deeply, perhaps after all these years.
After all these years, and after putting all of our attention there.
Yeah. But, even there, I was just thinking about it. The thing that occurred to me is Raven has a teacup, which for her is a very important teacup. And I'll let you tell your story if you want to, but the point is that teacup has an entire invested story in it. And the objects of the goddess, whether or not it's my little oil container that I got in the souk of Cairo, or it's something else, every one of them has a story invested in them that is my story. Mm-hmm. It's the goddess's story, it's spirit's story. So it's like there's more story there, that it's not just the thing that we see. And I think that in understanding that, and understanding that as we move into that space of realizing that by use we make sacred, by use, we move something into a sacred space. It's not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily that, you know, the saints, I don't know, teacup was sacred to start out with. But because the saint drank from it every day, and
it becomes imbued with that energy, with that devotion, with that focus, with that intention.
Yeah, and so I think that that's part of looking at how we walk the path of a priestess, is looking at the things that we have made sacred and have held sacred and have put on our altars and have created in sacred space, whether it is, you know, a little imagery of a doll, or whether it is an entire building, which we call a temple, that we have the opportunity to create that place that holds our spirit as a priestess, but it also holds that spirit of the goddess as well. You agree?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're her voice, we're her hands, we're her feet. You know, it's this web of interconnection.
Yeah, and that is part of who we have become. I wouldn't say necessarily it's who we were when we first came here, but it is definitely part of who we have become, because to each one of us, there is a different meaning to going to the temple at Philae. Even though each one of us might see that as the temple of Isis, and as magnificent and as beautiful as it is, each one of us will have different spaces that are truly remarkable for us. And each one of us will see different things that represent for us the goddess here on earth. So I guess I'm saying to the listeners, you know, don't be surprised if what you see as a representation is different from what someone else says. And don't let anybody else tell you what you're seeing is wrong.
Agreed. You know, we have to leave space for other people's ideas and other people's interpretations, and, you know, other people, you know, because what pops into my head is the idea of one way. You know, there's only one way to see things. There's only one way to do things. If anything, I think we represent the opposite of that. You know, because I think being a priestess means embracing diversity too. You know, and it's about, yeah, I guess diversity is the best way to say it, and respecting each other's, how would you say, I guess, respecting each other's viewpoint on things, or, you know, how we even see or hear the goddess. You know, it's not like, you know, any one of us corners the market on it. At least that's the way I feel.
I agree.
I think lots of times as a priestess, what we're charged with is to create a sacred space and hold it so that people have a place for their own experience. And it's not our job to control their experience, but to hold the container and be there and allow it, and create a safe place for that experience to happen. And yes, there are, you know, I mean, if somebody got really crazy or something, you might have to intervene, but, you know, for your own sake or others' sake, but that doesn't usually happen. Usually you're having ceremony and people have similar experiences, but there's going to be someone who's never had that experience. And that's what we do in so many ways. And that might be in some big planned solstice ceremony, or it might be in the bathroom of the grocery store, where you go back to use the bathroom and find somebody in complete meltdown crisis, and you could step in and provide that space for them. And so you never know where the goddess is going to ask you to go to work.
And, you know, in thinking about it, it's the exact opposite as, say, a minister or a rabbi who believes they have to be the intermediary between,
Right.
you know, a person and the divine. You know, we obviously, yes, we hold the container, we hold the space, but we're not saying to people, well, you need us in the middle to make that connection.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that I have a lot of trouble with is whenever I have a client who's come to me and they say that they are working with some guru or some speaker or some Indian medicine man or whatever it is, and they've been told that the only way they can get the answers is to work with this person.
And by the way, write another check.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just drives me a little bit crazy. Well, as we're getting on here, Karen, tell us a little bit. Now, you've got the Parliament of Religions coming up. You've got the Goddess Rising, Goddess Spirit Rising coming up. And that's going to be September 11th and 12th. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. It starts on Thursday, so maybe the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th. I'm doing my presentation on Friday, and I'm part of a panel on Sunday.
All right, great. Well, we'll see what we can do about convincing Raven that she wants to travel a little more, because she's flying out here that week. And
see what day my son puts me on his calendar for dinner.
Yeah, right. And then you've also got, you're still doing your radio show, is that correct?
Yes, every week, every Wednesday or Thursday night, I'm still doing the radio show. It's my guilty pleasure. You know, I really enjoy it because, you know, I don't have the time. I really want to read those 1,000 books up in my library, and I can't think of anything better than being the person who gets to ask questions of all of these wonderful people. So I feel like it's my continuing education as well.
Well, I also think that one way of holding space is doing this kind of show, whether it's a radio show or a video show or a podcast, because it does have the ability to hold within a period of time that people can see, hear, feel what it is we're offering them in a new and dynamic way. And I think that that's one of the, you know, it's one of the wonderful things of modern technology, much as we may rail against modern technology, is the fact that we can do this. And, you know, I've been in TV and video for many, many years, and I can remember a time whenever to sit here and have this conversation with two other people, it would have cost us $10,000 an hour easily.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So, you know,
technology is definitely a double-edged sword. I mean, sometimes I think it makes us work so much harder. You know, it's like that we don't have that downtime we used to have. We're so accessible. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm constantly on email, and it just, you kind of feel like you have to really make yourself stop because it's always like right there, sort of nipping at your heels.
Yeah, I know. And you feel like if somebody texts you and you don't answer it in the next 5 minutes, your fingers will fall off. But, you know, it is a way to make contact. And so even though we may be at a distance and we may not be able to be in each other's presence, this is a modern day circle of women. And I want to hold it as that we have that opportunity for women to, so those of you who are listening, you know, we'd love to hear what you thought about this subject. You know, this is not just us telling you what to think. This is what we want you to talk back.
Because we just love it when people tell us what to think.
Oh yeah, we're so good at that one. But so tell us again the title of your anthology that you came out with.
Well, the anthology is the name of the radio show.
Oh, okay.
With a subtitle. So it's Voices of the Sacred Feminine, which is the name of the radio show. But the subtitle is Conversations to Reshape Our World. And, you know, I have a lot of priestesses in it, but also people like Noam Chomsky, Father Roy Bourgeois, who was excommunicated from the Vatican. There's a memorial to Lane Redmond in it. Phyllis Chesler, who wrote Woman's Inhumanity to Woman. A lot of great women and men in that book.
Yeah, Raven, we could do the excommunicated from the Mormon Church show.
I bet we could find quite a few.
Well, I want to thank you for being on with us this evening and for figuring out a way that would work with your technology. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in September up in Simi Valley. And I wish you very well for the World's Parliament of Religions. And I look forward to hearing you on the radio.
Same here. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate your time. And it's been fun getting to know you a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we Egyptaholics have to stick together.
You better believe it.
And Raven, I want to thank you for being present. And I know that after chasing gophers out of your garage in the small hour, prairie dogs. I'm sorry, prairie dogs out of your. Hey, I had to chase a lizard out. But
oh, my heart bleeds for you, baby. Unless it was a Komodo dragon, I'm afraid you don't have me. I'll tell you, in a garage, and the prairie dog starts doing their little bark. It is so loud, and he was so cute. Just briefly, I waited till it was dark, hoping he would run out by himself. Anyway, I finally started calling people. And so my great girlfriend, Diana, I love you madly, thank you. She finally says, Rave, I'll come over, I'll do it. So she comes over with her boots and a broom and some cardboard boxes to make barriers. And so I'm pulling out the old cabinets, which are falling apart, and the little guy's back there screaming, and we start hurting him with the broom, and she says, Rave, don't kill it. We'll have to do ceremony. And I said, I don't want to kill it. I don't know what to do with its little body. Oh, it was hysterical. But don't you love it? Don't kill it. We'll have to do ceremony.
Hey, you've trained her well.
So she came trained.
Okay. Well, so I apologize for keeping you up so late whenever I know you were up so late last night and the night before doing tarot parties. Raven does parties for people where she goes and does readings, and she's an incredibly brilliant tarot reader. So thank you both.
I got to be in Santa Fe and drove home with the moons coming up full, and we had a gorgeous sunset, and then there was the sunset and the moonrise. It was really beautiful.
And we should remind people to go out and look at the moon tonight.
Yes, the Venus Jupiter conjunction, and that's supposed to happen shortly after sunset. So
yeah, well, sunset here is 8:02. I don't know what it is where you are, but where I saw that earlier today while I was watching the Weather Channel. The only thing that apparently doesn't have the Kardashians on it. So
they don't cause weather?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I want to thank you for being here. And next week we have Risa Harrington, who's going to be on and tell us about what the work she does about bringing in the light. And she's actually here in Ramona, I think, in California. But we have a number of interesting beings, women lined up, including the lady Addie from The Last Avatar, who will be on the next week. And Abby Spenner McBride, who'll be on a special edition in July.
I love her music. I use it on my radio show.
She's fabulous. And the Vegas Vortex is, of course, her creation. So,
yeah.
By the way, did you study with Ruth Barrett? You said something about studying with Dianic in LA. For
some years I was in Circle of Aradia. Yes.
Okay. All right. And so anyway, we've got lots of interesting people coming. We look forward to having you come and visit us. We do have the Gathering of Priestesses group, which is on Facebook. We invite you to join. We thank you for watching us tonight. And for now, we wish you blessings on your travel, and blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.